Vodou is the only system that has given us a nation. Do you know any a nation or space that was created by Africans using any other system? I'm not sure exactly what exactly we need to see to know what success looks like. But then I guess if you're defining it by I guess grand buildings and all the rest of it, then maybe you might be looking at the New Yorks and the European metropolis, which again were built not only by our blood, sweat, and tears, but in some cases our own ingenuity for people who were meant to be illiterate. I'll leave that with Benjamin Banneker and the likes of other inventors who've shown that beyond. Today's discussion, we're centering it around revolutionary principles. And why, for me, the principles are important is, your principles is your thought process, the ideas you hold about not only yourself, but the world, and I guess how you conceptualize everything. And this is one of the things that I love about Baba Wade's book. And for you, Jay Ortiz, you asked about the book behind Baba. Here is the book. Is the third contributing factor that made the film. One of the things I love most especially is what the book covers is the very fact that Haiti is not just an example of Haiti in a geographical space. It's an example of the experiences you find of Black people all over the world, wherever you may find them. It will be under oppression, under physical, should we say, poverty, because success is not just you have a big building, so you're no longer poor. Indices show with all the wealth in Europe, it also happens to be some of the most unhappy places. So it's not just the material wealth that shows success, in my opinion. Anyway, you're allowed to differ. But Baba Nobles does something very interesting here. And I guess that speaks to him being a psychologist. And Baba, if I can just ask you the question, if you can explain for us, please, what the idea of a meme is, because what I love is in here, you do it for Toussaint, you do it for Dessalines, you do it for a few of the other leaders within the revolution. And I ask because in this age, memes have become very prolific and very important, in the ways in which our psychology is manipulated. And again, as we mentioned Ukraine, I'll bring it back because at the start of that war, there was this, it was like a simple little story that was shared and it went viral online. And it basically, in a sense, tried to create the whole conflict as an analogy. And it painted Russia as like the domestic abuse partner who was in a domestic kind of violent relationship with Ukraine. And it made the whole issue so simple, and people, I don't know if they thought that was a whole history lesson in about 10 lines of sentences, they started sharing it. And from my reading, I was like, well, this is Psychos. This wasn't just a nice, lovely story. This is reducting everything into a particular framework where Russia, and I'm not an ardent supporter of Russia or anything, but I just saw the effectiveness of the meme by turning a conflict that is decades old into this nice, simple story about domestic abuse. So please, if you could, share with us in your expertise what a meme is, what a meme does, and why it's useful for us or can be useful for us as African people interested in self-autonomy and our own liberation.
That's important to probably to explain, and I'm not sure I could do justice to it without asking somebody to take a class. But memes really are informational structures that are embedded in the mind and influence the behaviors that you emit. Now, we see memes all over the place now because they make it like cartoonish stuff, memes like little cartoons. But memes are ideations. They're ideas. And an example I try to use to say how informational structures come in all kinds of forms. Sometimes it's poetry, sometimes it's images, it's color, it's sound, it's movement. All those are memetic ideations. But the meme is embedded in our consciousness and in turn replicates itself. The memes only replicate themselves. So I say in the book that there's a thing called shattered consciousness for African people where we have European Western memes in our minds that are influencing our behavior. And the example I give most, I hope clearly, is that once you put the ideation that black is bad, black is inferior, black is unworthy, black is unwanted as an idea that becomes mimetic, then black people who have that infection will get in their car, drive out of their community, go to a white community to buy ice cream because the meme tells them that white ice cream is better or colder than black ice cream. The meme will actually defy your logic of understanding the natural order of the world. That's why it's so serious. And the memes are not just words, they're images, they're sounds. So, playing certain kind of music, like, for a while there was some discussion about acid rock and roll and rhythm and blues and the what do you call them? The religious music of African people, but no one looks at the fact that rhythm of the music dictates your muscle memory to cause your body to move in a particular way. And the same music can infect your muscle movement to cause you to be catatonic, to be stiff, to be unreliable. So memes are important in my estimation because they really are informational structures embedded in our minds. So we have as diasporic children, we have been infected. I use this kind of in my analysis of the Haitian Revolution, that part of the inability of the revolution to be successful is that there were mimetic ideations embedded in the architects of the revolution's mind. So they struggled with trying to be free, but trying to be liberated, but drawing from the mimetic ideations of what rulership looks like from Europe. They didn't take, even though Voodoo was the key reason for the success, they did not, in my estimation, use Vodou to establish the Constitution, to establish the way of life, to establish the rules of engagement in Voodoo, not in European models of governance. Memes are important, I think, because they impact our consciousness. I will stop with this. There is, I believe it was Desir, that in writing his Constitution, he said that everybody in Haiti will be known as black. You'd be black. And that was correct. But black is the identifier for others to recognize you. Consciousness is the instrument for you to recognize the world. So you can't have just black, you have to have both. You have to have an African consciousness and a black identity. And we have to define the meaning of that black identity. And we have to also see and interrogate what is the knowing of our conscious, of our being with knowing. That's consciousness. What is the knowing? How is it grounded in an African worldview, in an African value system, in an African philosophy, and, if I may, in a revolutionary principle that guides our behavior? Can I, if you allow me, I want to leap to say that the idea of revolutionary principle is only one. There's only one prime principle in my mind. One prime, hear my word, prime. The one prime principle is, in quote, to be African or not to be. That's the principle. You have no other choice. Either you be African or you don't be. That's a prime principle. That's a prime principle. We said 3 times. That's a prime principle. To be African or not to be. Now that's the easy part. The harder part is now to unpack that prime principle and ask, what does it look like in terms of practice or praxis? And I would argue that what it looks like is that the prime principle translates to be African, to be family, and to be awesome, wherever Africans find themselves. We have to be driven by we African, and you and I are family. And I will now this gets in weird people. Sometimes, well, no, I don't like them Jamaicans, or I don't like them Alphas, or I don't like them Liberians, or I'm not like them Nigerians. That's insanity. You family. In fact, I to my students make the argument that Africa or Bantu is our last name, and all our geographical places our first name. So I'm a Jamaican Bantu. I'm a Texas Bantu. I'm an Open Bantu. I'm a Liberian Bantu. But it is our family name that allows us to be identified by the world, just like in our own family style. I'm part of the Nobles family. So people know, when they see the Nobles, they know certain character folk there. They know that if you mess with one noble, they're going to jump out the project windows. They're going to come through doors. They're going to pick up hammers. They're going to do all this stuff. That's how them nobles act. They don't say that's Wade nobles. They say that's them nobles. That's how them nobles act. So we have to have our understanding that our anchor is to be African, to be family, and then to be awesome. There's no Saturday night special. There's no can I get a pass? There's no can you break something off for me? No, you have to be awesome in everything you do. So that's what I would argue, that the meme allows me then to say, let me, if I had a, what do you call them? If I have an X-ray machine, if I could do an X-ray machine to X-ray your brain and identify how many memes are in your consciousness that are African versus that are French, or that are Jamaican, that are Spanish or Portuguese or English. We have all these little memes in our minds, and to the extent that we become individually or personally liberated is because we've shifted balance. We've shifted balance of how many African stuff is in our consciousness versus how of that taught stuff. And we all got the taught stuff. Ain't nobody free of that. We all been taught not to be African. We've all been taught to raise up and praise anything Western, anything European. So all that's in our minds. And so it is important, and just like my Queen Mother says, that this idea of space, narrowing your space, is important, but it works in our minds the same way. Our minds get conflated so narrow that all we can see is white thought. That's the damage.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful.
You know, I'm reflecting on what you said, Baba, in terms of using European notions, I guess, of governance and defining self and sovereignty, and defining oneself juridically. At the time that we did this film, I was like thick into, and one of the reasons I'm so animated is because I was very this putting my mind, body, and soul in the space of the revolution. What was going on there? What was its purpose ultimately? And for me, one of the driving principles was about the reclamation of space, reclaiming it in every single way, physically, topographically, geographically, geopolitically, and constitutionally as well. The notion of everyone who was effectively an African, a Haitian, was neg, was black, including those Polish men and women who were Jacobeans and fought on our side, and including whatever, sundry smattering of mixed race people and other Europeans who fought on the side of African revolutionaries. I came to understand the notion of neg, of blackness, as being a frequency. So the color of your melanation, not that it wasn't consequential, it did. But at the end of the day, if you have people who happen to be white, you have people who happen to be, I don't know, métis or whatever, people who embodied and absorbed and lived and died for the cause of the revolution, being referred to as neg, being referred to as moi, that meant that noirness, blackness, noirness, Africanness had to do with a specific frequency that we had to attain. And the frequency is not just what is, manifest in the social structures that we have for ourselves, but it is also a question of us, as you've articulated, in the mind. And the whole issue of the pineal gland and how that impacts our circadian rhythms, and in fact how sound affects movement, and our reading of space, our movement through it is about that black frequency. In the human rights movement, we have vacillated a great deal about using the word black, because it becomes a colorist construct. So we've opted in on the side of referring to us collectively as African descendants. So no matter what color you were an African descendant. That was the primary thing. That was the important thing. But I still think there's a validity to referring to oneself as black, because I think black
absolutely
frequency. It is a space that we have to operate in. It is, it's a vibration. It is a mean that allows us to embrace the enormity of the cosmos and the diversity that is found in the heavens, embrace it within ourselves, and to, and it's an expansive space, so that we're constantly regenerating, we're growing, we're changing, we're expanding, knocking people out with our elbows if necessary.
I think you're absolutely correct.
That's how I read that.
I think you're absolutely correct. And it is that we have to define the conversation on our terms.
Yeah.
As soon as we start talking about black, someone else says, "Oh, that now you're dealing with colorism." No, that's not what we're bringing to the table. We're bringing to deep thought of what black as a color means. It is a particular, specific vibratory force that is black. There's a different one for red, a different one for green, a different one. So, but to the black that we're talking about is how we are identified by the world. And it is in our color, the pigmentation in our skin is an important badge for us to recognize. But what's really being recognized by the world is the vibrating, radiating energy force that is our spirit. It is that spirit that should be recognized by our blackness. And I don't have any time really to try to explain why white folks join us or don't join us, why white folks die for us or don't die for us. But that's something that's good. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to explain that. What I want to do is try to understand that if what the Kikongo and the Bantu philosophy has taught me is that that we're not human beings, we are spirit beings. We are energy fields. And so when you get 4 or 5 brothers and sisters together, that's an energy field. There's a power in that moment that's different from the one brother standing on the corner. Well, it's different from the one sister who's got a hand on her hip. It is the energy field that gets made up, and it is recognized by our blackness. Now, that vibrating, radiating energy that is spirit has to be unpacked and has to be understood, because the language confuses us. We are spirit. We are spirit. We are, in ancient Kemetic, it's called Sakojer, the all. We are the all. And so if we use language, like I said, that I was taught to talk about mind, body, and spirit. And then sometimes we get confused. Well, the spirit belongs to religion, the body belongs to physical, etc. No, see, that's an error. We are not mind, body. We don't have mind, body, and spirit. What we have is spirit that manifests itself, that expresses itself in a material form. So, Sister Bello, when you said, I think you said that we are one with the cosmos. That's almost correct, in my opinion. But what's more correct is that we are the cosmos. See, we say I'm one with the cosmos. By implication, there's me and there's the cosmos, and I'm one with it. No, I am the cosmos. Every single elemental structure in the universe is me. And so if I understand spiritness and not spirituality, then we can begin talking about reframing the narrative, using different languaging to explain how we operate in the world. I wonder. Wonder is an important skill. I wonder. Have our children wonder. And then the second one is imagine. I imagine. Imagination and memory are the 2 pillars of our, in my opinion, of our psychological functioning. Imagination and memory. Well, that's why we rescue our history as far back as we can, because the more memory we have, the more stimulation we have to imagine. I imagine as a child, how come Jupiter don't bump into Mars? See, that's an astronomical question that a child could answer, but it takes a genius of a physicist to explain that circular movement of the universe, because that child's imagination that stimulate that question, why doesn't Jupiter bump into Mars, is because the same elemental forces that are in the universe, in the cosmos, is in that child. And it is stimulating him to wonder. And so we have to, I think, we have to wonder about what we will be like when we complete the revolution. We have to wonder about that. We have to talk about that, but not talk about that not as mental, as a mental question, but as a spirit being made manifest. A spirit being made manifest. That's the key to us having an understanding of how we translate that prime principle to be African or not to be to its secondary praxis, which is how do I walk in the world, affirming life, affirming myself with an African face.
Fantastic. Mama Bayyinah? Sorry, yeah, let's unmute you.
Okay, absolutely. And I do stand corrected.
And what
I did that humbly, please.
Well, it's wonderful because every time we are corrected, we can grow. We're not into that sickness of thinking that whatever we think today is it.
That's right.
And there is no possibility for anything else. Only fools think that way. So absolutely, thank you, Baba. I am the cosmos.
Yes.
So, if I may, there is a Kikongo term that's called Saya, Zaya, Saya. It means to be able to imagine or to imagine additional thoughts based upon the conversation you are in. It's different from the European. Let's have a Q&A period. And we have structured. We're going to have a talk, then we have a Q&A. Throw Q&A away. Have Zaya, where based upon what we are saying, our hearer can imagine additional thoughts or even reveal what they misunderstood, called Zaya. See, I think languaging is important for us to also adopt as scholars and practitioners, that we use certain terminology that helps keeps us on the correct path. And so my observation when my sister talked about we are one with the cosmos, my imagination led me to, my Zaya led me to, wait, it's not quite we are one with the cosmos. We are the same elemental chemical structure of the cosmos, so we are one. And if you go back and start doing your religious readings with in biblical texts, all this conversation about made in the image of God. Well, how are you made in the image? If you made in the image, what's the substance? You can't just have the image of it. You get to have the substance of it. And if you have the substance of the divine, then you are divine. You see, that's the kind of I think we got to have conversation about, so that we, in fact, tweak very diligently the details that get us off path, because we are taught to default. Our education guarantees that we will default back to Western thinking if we don't intentionally say, I'm going to be African or not be.
Absolutely. And nothing happens by chance. If you cannot imagine it, if you don't set it as a goal, as an objective, it will never happen. And that's why they program us to repeat what they say. That's why we are forever, like now, it just irks me every time I hear people talk, oh, Western, Western or Occidental. What happened? The same man who said a few years back he was white man. When did he become Western? And what does Western means? West of what? West of what? Where is he Western of? That's right. So, but everybody, that's the proper way to say. I said, no, I don't know that. I'm a Black woman and I know white folks across from me. And I'm not, when I'm talking about a people, I want to geographically place those people. If I'm talking about Euro-Christians, that's what I want to talk about. I'm not going to say Western when I don't know west of what.
Absolutely.
We are forever repeating other people's nonsense without questioning them.
And the construct, therefore, that I would like to share with the audience is a construct called languaging. Languaging. If you have to study the language, and in every language there's embedded a logic of how to be human. So when we take on the English language, and I'm trapped with English language right now, except we just decided we're gonna make English Ebonics, and that sort of gives us a little freedom here. But when you make the English language your singular and primary mode of expression, you carry the civilization of white folk through your mouth. I think the weight of their civilization comes through your mouth, which is a reflection of your mind. So we have to, I want the audience to think very carefully and very slowly. Be patient. Don't jump and say, I'm gonna run now, I got this, I'm gonna go, Dr. Nova said this, Queen Mother said this, Sister Bello said, but don't be running out there acting a fool. Some of the stuff requires adult supervision. And by adult supervision, I mean the ancestors. Some of this requires you to quiet yourself to hear the voice of the ancestors come through you as we work through understanding this thing called languaging.